Hi, and welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is March 6th, and today we're going to hear part 2 of the article that we started yesterday, entitled The Swift-Footed Giant That Doesn't Actually Bury Its Head in the Sand. And as soon as we see that phrase, bury its head in the sand, everybody knows who we're talking about.
That's right, of course. We just see it in cartoons and the phrases everywhere in English. We are talking about ostriches. However, we have buried the lead a little bit because it's day 2 and we have not yet discussed this famous myth because it doesn't actually bury its head in the sand. So we're going to discuss the myth and also I'll tell us where it came from.
Okay, let's jump right into our article. Beyond their impressive size and speed, ostriches have many interesting traits, along with one famous myth. For centuries, people have believed that ostriches bury their heads in the sand when frightened. In reality, they never do this. When trying to stay hidden, they simply lie flat on the ground with their long necks stretched out, which can create the illusion of a buried head from a distance.
One of their most remarkable traits is their eyes. Ostriches' eyes are larger than their brains, each measuring about 5 centimeters across, which is the largest of any land vertebrate. These huge eyes give them sharp, long-distance vision and a wide field of view, helping them spot predators across the vast African savanna. Their excellent night vision also allows them to stay alert in low-light environments, and even during deep sleep, they often keep at least one eye open to remain vigilant.
Their eggs are just as impressive. A typical ostrich egg measures about 15 centimeters in length and weighs around 1.4 kilograms. Despite being the largest eggs laid by any living bird, they are surprisingly small in proportion to the size of the adult bird. Their thick shells are strong enough to support the weight of an adult human. Yet, a newly hatched ostrich chick can still break out by rubbing its beak against the shell and pushing with its head, neck, and legs. This behavior is unlike that of many other birds, which use an egg tooth, adding one more interesting fact about the already amazing ostrich egg. Well, we ended our episode yesterday with this interesting little factoid that Chris turned up in his research, which is
ostrich intestines are over 14 meters long.
How can they be that long? How does that all fit in that body?
I guess it has to do with the way birds digest food, right? And so intestines need to be very long in order to absorb nutrients. And we know birds don't have teeth, so they swallow stones to help pre-digest food. And then it takes a long time to get through its body in order to break down those rough and kind of leafy greens that I presume they all eat.
It must go in a lot of circles or be very squiggly.
And we know that people would use these animals for food and meat, that they would also use the rest of the animal if it were possible. And we know intestines in history were used to be inflated and turned into balls. They were used to make sausage and any number of kind of casings that you might need. And so I presume if you were to have an ostrich farm and you needed to make some kind of casings, well, one ostrich could provide you 14 meters worth.
That's amazing. Let's go back to the beginning of the article. Beyond their impressive size and speed, ostriches have many interesting traits, along with one famous myth. Now, saying that something has interesting traits really does not give us much information at all. However, when we say, along with one famous myth, we're probably going to think back to the title, which says, that doesn't actually bury its head in the sand. That is most certainly the myth that they're talking about, and it is indeed.
So myths are stories that we used to believe in the past were true. However, we know that's not the case today. I wonder how many people today still believe ostriches bury their heads in the sand. I know, though, that ostriches were portrayed as hiding their heads in the sand in like Warner Brothers cartoons, and those aren't really all that old. I bet you if you polled or asked a bunch of people, I would think most people would say, tell me everything you know about ostriches. I'm guessing bury their heads in the sand will come up.
Probably be number one.
I bet, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So we can pretty much be sure that the famous myth is going to be about burying their heads in the sand, which is not true. For centuries, people have believed that ostriches bury their heads in the sand when frightened. We're going to find out what they really do in the next couple sentences. So that means that a long time people believed it, but it wasn't true. In reality, they never do this. Now that just strikes down the myth right on the spot. So they never ever do this. However, when you hear what they actually do, maybe you can sort of understand why people got that idea, that wrong idea. When trying to stay hidden, they simply lie flat on the ground with their long necks stretched out, which can create the illusion of a buried head from a distance.
So we do know that these birds will stretch their necks out. We do know that when they are laying their eggs and creating a little nesting space, they do get their faces into the sand and dirt to create kind of a little hole or a divot for those eggs to sit in. And I'm guessing when ancient observers were watching ostriches without binoculars, without the aids of glasses, they were kind of looking at a distance and maybe it appeared that way and the stories get passed down and twisted across history. And now we have this myth about them just burying their heads in the sand when frightened.
Right. A good word to learn is illusion. And it's spelled with an I, illusion. That means you have the image of something, the idea of something that is not true. We have a similar word, illusion, A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N, which has a completely different meaning. Allusion is something referred to. So he made an allusion to a story I told last year. That means he referred to it. He made a reference to it.
If you study any Roman history, you will eventually come across the person Pliny the Elder. He is a famed Roman writer and statesman, and he said that ostriches were profoundly stupid, which is quite strong language.
Yes.
And he is the apparent source that ostriches bury their heads in the sand. He might not be the first person to have said this, but from the historical record, this is where we get this information. Now, I should note that Pliny the Elder was a very heavy man, and we believe he had asthma. Oh. Now, he died at the eruption of Mount Vesuvius when he sailed directly into the exploding volcano.
Why did he do that?
So Vesuvius was a disaster days before the volcano erupted, and he was so interested in it that he sailed directly to the island while it was exploding rain and ash and fire. I should say, I don't know any ostriches that ran directly towards the volcano while it was blowing up. So while Pliny the Elder may cast his aspersions towards our friends the ostriches, they didn't die in Vesuvius.
So in other words, he wasn't the brightest bulb in the box himself?
So he was like, oh, okay, science, let's learn. Interesting. Dude, you cannot run and you have asthma. It's a volcano. What are you doing?
What are you doing? Okay, so I should mention that idiom that I just used. He's not the brightest bulb in the box.
Yes.
So that we are imagining a box of light bulbs, a whole bunch of them in the same box, and maybe some of them light up more brightly than the others. And when we say somebody is not the brightest bulb in the box, that means he's not very smart.
Yeah. Or the weird thing where some people are brilliant in one field, so they believe they're brilliant at everything. I don't know about this one, Pliny. He went down like a chump.
Actually, I think that's most of us, though. We may be really good at something, passable in other things, and not very good at everything else.
Yeah, that's normal.
Yep.
All right, let's go to paragraph 2 here. One of their most remarkable traits is their eyes. And if you've ever seen an ostrich, of course, those massive eyes just stand out.
Right. And like we mentioned yesterday, those very large eyelashes.
Beautiful eyelashes. Ostriches' eyes are larger than their brains, each measuring about 5 centimeters across, which is the largest of any land vertebrate.
Now, that is really something that your eyes are larger than your brains. I've heard of people's eyes being bigger than their stomach, but
yes.
That is just an idiom. That means that when you see a lot of food, for example, at a buffet, at a smorgasbord, everything looks so good, and you just pile up, and then you find you really can't eat all that food. We have an idiom that says, your eyes were bigger than your stomach. But in this case, their eyes are larger than their brains.
Yes.
And that's really crazy to think about. You think, oh, no wonder they're so dumb. They have such a small brain.
Yeah, I wonder if it isn't, I mean, their heads can't be too heavy. They have massively strong necks, like all those vertebrae. They have 17 vertebrae to hold up their neck. But if their head's too heavy, that's going to impact their ability to use their neck well. So most of their skull is taken up with their eyes. Each eye is 60 grams each. An ostrich's brain is 25 grams and about the size of a walnut, which, make an okay sign with your hands. And that's about the size of a walnut. So a vertebrate is an animal that has a spine, and that bone in your neck is a vertebrae.
And you can also pronounce it vertebrate. A vertebrate or a vertebrate, both are okay.
These huge eyes give them sharp, long-distance vision and a wide field of view, helping them spot predators across the vast African savanna.
For field of view, you could also say field of vision.
And they can see rather far, over 2 kilometers. That's pretty good.
Without glasses.
If you're living on a savanna, that's plains or grasslands, you don't have a lot of trees, and you have tall grass. And so you have lots of critters living in that grass that maybe wants to jump out and eat you. Mm-hmm. So being able to see very far and very well is probably pretty important for them.
Mm-hmm. The word vast means wide and spread out. It spreads out very far, and you can see very far because, as we mentioned previously, there are not a lot of tall trees. The land is quite dry, so there are low bushes and grasses. So vast, it spreads out really far in front of you.
Their excellent night vision also allows them to stay alert in low-light environments, and even during deep sleep, they often keep at least one eye open to remain vigilant.
Actually, a lot of animals go out hunting at night. They are nocturnal animals. So that's why you can't just curl up and go to sleep and then forget about everything till tomorrow morning. There are going to be a lot of animals actively wanting to find and eat you.
That's right. Dusk, D-U-S-K. That's when the sun is going down and it is just about to be nighttime. Dawn, D-A-W-N, is right before the sun comes up, and you will see lots of animals active at that time. If you watch any nature documentaries, of course, they do a lot of late-night filming near a watering hole where all of these animals are meeting to get their drinks, and maybe sometimes they have some fights.
And the word vigilant is a good one to learn. It's a fancier word. It means something very similar to a word that just came up before, earlier in the sentence, alert. To be very alert, that means that you are wide awake and paying attention. Vigilant is an even stronger word, a fancier word, but a stronger word meaning you are watching out for something bad that might happen and preparing yourself so you can defend yourself.
If someone passes away, you may talk about keeping vigil.
Vigil, yeah.
So you drop the A and T, and this is after a person dies. Maybe you are staying awake and praying for them. This is to keep vigil. Now, let's underline the phrase here, keep at least one eye open. This can be often used idiomatically, but here this is just like literally it keeps its eye open at night. When you keep your eye open for something, you are keeping careful watch. And so it ties in very nicely with vigilant that Karen just described.
I think some sea creatures also do this. They have one eye open, and then they can kind of sleep on one side, but the other eye is open watching out for predators.
Doesn't that seem hard to imagine as creatures that need darkness and closing your eyes? Like keeping your eye open while asleep seems stressful. Unimaginable to me.
Stressful, but their desire to survive is probably very strong, so they're willing to make the sacrifice. Okay, our third paragraph. Their eggs are just as impressive, and we mentioned this yesterday. The eggs are huge, and there are people who buy and eat ostrich eggs. A typical ostrich egg measures about 15 centimeters in length and weighs around 1.4 kilograms. Now, that is huge. So you'd get quite an omelet out of that egg.
I wonder, one ostrich egg is the equivalent of how many chicken eggs?
I'm guessing probably a dozen.
At least a dozen, like a massive omelet, right? Just like you said.
You would probably have to divide it up and cook it separately, or that omelet would get too thick and burn. Despite being the largest eggs laid by any living bird, they are surprisingly small in proportion to the size of the adult bird. So when they say any living bird, they're suggesting
there were bigger eggs in the past.
That's right, and bigger birds, more like dinosaurs, because dinosaurs apparently
have evolved into birds.
That's right.
I will say an ostrich is a very good example of that, too. I mean, they just seem very dinosaur-esque.
They probably have been around a very, very long time. So they are the largest eggs by any bird that currently exists. However, when you compare them to the size of the body of the ostrich, they are not really that big.
So actually, it's the smallest egg in relation to the size of its bird, of the parent. Apparently, it's about 1% the weight of an ostrich. But for example, a kiwi bird egg is about 15% the body mass of the mother.
Wow.
I just thought of this. What is the body mass percentage of a baby to the average weight of a woman when she gives birth? A baby is often 9 pounds, 8 pounds.
When it's born, it's usually around 7 to 8 pounds.
7 to 8 pounds. And we'll say the average woman is how many pounds? What's the math?
We'll go with 50 kilograms because that's about what I weigh.
That's, 1%. That's tiny compared to the size of the parents.
Exactly. Okay, let's go on. Their thick shells are strong enough to support the weight of an adult human. So you are not going to crack it by standing on it.
Who's the guy that tested this?
I wonder. It must be pretty hard to crack them. Maybe they have a special tool?
Maybe they stand on it. They were walking and they thought it was a rock and I'm standing on an ostrich egg. Or they were just in a lab and a guy's like, hey, watch me.
And it didn't break. Yep, so you probably need like a machete or something like that, a very large, strong knife. Yet a newly hatched ostrich chick can still break out by rubbing its beak against the shell and pushing with its head, neck, and legs. That's interesting because it says in the next sentence that many birds need a special egg tooth in order to do the same thing. This behavior is unlike that of many other birds, which use an egg tooth, adding one more interesting fact about the already amazing ostrich egg. So, for example, a little chick, has an egg tooth that it uses to poke the shell so it can poke it open and get out.
I had never heard of an egg tooth before this article. When I looked at a picture of an egg tooth, I'm like, oh, I've seen that before. I did not know that was an egg tooth. I thought it was a bird that just had like a little hook. And apparently they use that. They poke their hole and get oxygen. And like you said, that's how they kind of just tap their way out. And this was news to me. I did not know that birds had this. And I especially didn't know that ostriches didn't have one.
You can check me on this, but I think turtles have it too.
That makes sense, doesn't it? Right? Now, turtles tend to have, or is it tortoises? One of them have very leathery, soft
Leathery eggs, that's right. And you have to be able to poke through that.
But I'm guessing an ostrich probably has that like kind of chicken hard egg-like kind of shell, right?
That's right.
They don't have the leathery shells.
You better Google this all because we're not really sure here.
This is pure speculation at the end
Yeah, you
here.
better look this up. But this brings us to the end of the article, which means that we're going to start on the questions now. Number 1, which of the following characteristics is not true about ostriches?
A, their larger toe features a claw for protection.
It is true.
That's true. In
fact,
is really
Johnny
true. That
Cash has big one.
That's right. First-hand experience.
Right, and he survived. Okay, and B, their long neck mainly supports their body weight. No, because what it really supports is that small head with the small brain.
The neck supporting the body.
So we should circle B. That is not true, but let's look at C and D as well.
C, their large eyes allow them to detect danger from far away. Well, of course that's
true.
That's what those eyes do.
And we said about 2 kilometers, so that's quite a ways. D, their powerful legs help them move quickly across the land. They're extremely fast. So D is true. That leaves B. Number 2.
What is the main function of ostriches' feathers?
Now, this makes me kind of laugh because the first thing I think of is what I mentioned yesterday, fancy women's clothes, very showy women's clothes. But that is not the answer. A, to help them regulate their body temperature in extreme climates. That is the correct answer because they mostly live in the African savanna, which is it has very desert-like conditions, so it gets very, very hot in the day, so they have to fluff their feathers up to cool themselves off. It gets very cold at night, so they have to bring their feathers in to keep themselves warm. So A is the correct answer. B?
To increase running speed by reducing wind resistance. Well, that's not the main function.
No.
They use those feathers. They do stretch them out for balance and control, but they're trying to regulate their temperature.
Right. C, to help control their movement and shift directions, not their main function.
D, to lift themselves off the ground more efficiently, which they can't do at all by flying.
Okay, very good. Number 3, which of the following behaviors is typical of ostriches?
A, they gather closely to frighten away predators.
It did mention that.
That sounds like elephant behavior to me.
Yeah, that's true. B, they use their sharp egg tooth to break out of their shells. That's not true. They don't have an egg tooth. They just use their beak and they just keep rubbing against the shell to get out.
Letter C, they lie low with their necks stretched out along the ground.
And when do they do that?
And they do that to hide from predators.
That's right. So they don't bury their head in the ground. They will stretch out, lie flat on the ground. That makes them harder to see. And D, they extend their wings as much as possible to increase running speed. Not true, because if you extend your wings, there's going to be more wind resistance. They will flap them out a little bit to probably control their direction, but they do not extend them out as much as possible. So D is not true. C is the correct answer.
And finally, number 4, what does the word vigilant most likely mean in the second paragraph of the Day 2 passage?
And we discussed that a bit during the broadcast, so if you need a refresher, you can go back and look at the article now. A is awake. Now,
No.
It does mean you have to be awake to be vigilant, but that's not the best choice here.
Letter B, relaxed. Well, I would say this is the opposite of vigilant because vigilant people are watching out for danger, or if they are keeping vigil, you want to really be using your full heart and paying attention to what you're doing. Relaxed is generally not very vigilant behavior.
And we'll probably be quite tense when we are vigilant, so that's the wrong answer. C is energetic. Now, that is not the right answer because vigilant means that you are watching something very carefully. You do not have to have a lot of physical energy to be moving and shuffling and fidgeting around. You just need to focus mentally and use your eyes.
Soldiers will often keep vigil and they will often keep the fire while doing it. They're standing around and watching a fire and watching the doors and watching the gates. They're not really running around. They're carefully watching. Letter D, the answer is, like I just said, watchful.
So you're paying close attention. You are really being careful if there are any signs that a predator may be coming your way.
So you spoke a little earlier about the fact that birds evolved from dinosaurs. And I learned that actually birds existed while there were dinosaurs, and then other dinosaurs kept evolving into bird-like species that we have today.
That makes sense to me.
Now, interestingly, we talked about the 2 toes on ostriches. Emus exist and are often confused for ostriches. If you look at the footprint of an emu, it has 3 toes, unlike the ostriches 2. And when you look at the footprint of an emu, there is hardly a more dinosaur-looking foot on the modern Earth.
How interesting.
It's incredibly dinosaur-looking, like big old footprint.
All kinds of animal documentaries that you should start looking into now.
Yes.
That's all we have time for today. Tune in next time. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.